Baruch Hashem. Today's daf yomi is zevachim daf pei beis zevachim 82. We're going to start on the bottom of pei aleph on the beis at the Mishnah on the bottom of pei aleph on the beis. So it says the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah the following. Okay. Hanitanim bifnim. Let's say you have the blood that's supposed to be applied inside the sanctuary, shenis arvu b'nitzan and it got mixed up with the blood that was supposed to be applied in the courtyard outside the sanctuary. Then yishbechu la'ama. So you have to wait till sunset, and then you have to pour it into like a canal, and basically not use it. Nasan, and here we don't say like we said in the previous Mishnah that Rabbi Eliezer says you could say rowan. Yeah, you could imagine that the blood that's not supposed to be there, we imagine it like it's water. And Rabbi Eliezer doesn't say that in this case, and we'll have to see why. Let's say you put some blood outside, and then you go back and put it inside, that'll be kosher. But if you put it inside and then outside, so Rabbi Akiva says if you take any of the blood that's not supposed to be inside, it's disqualifying to all the blood. Whereas the Chachamim say it's kosher. Rabbi Akiva, and the Mishnah explains, Rabbi Akiva Omer Kol Dam Hinechnesu Lepar Lechaper Behechol Psuin. That Rabbi Akiva says any blood that was brought into the sanctuary when it's not supposed to be there is disqualified. Only the chatas disqualified if it goes into the sanctuary, because that's based upon the pasuk that says, it says in the pasuk that will yuvah, that you're not allowed to bring in the blood of the chatas. And that's specifically what the pasuk says. And so therefore the Chum say it's only about the chatas. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Afa Asham, also the Asham, just like the chatas, because it says in the pasuk Kachatas Kasham. So Rabbi Eliezer extends it not just to the chatas, but also the Asham. So the Gemara has the question that we alluded to: V'nifog nami Rabbi Eliezer Baha. Why doesn't Rabbi Eliezer also argue in our Mishnah like he argued earlier with the Chacham and say that the blood that was mixed up with the other blood, you can view it as it's water and still apply it? The Gemara says, no. What would you do? First, you put the blood outside and then inside. That we don't want to do. Just like it's a mitzvah to put the top blood before the below blood. It's a mitzvah to put the inside is a holier mitzvah than the outside, the blood that goes inside. So you would have to do the blood inside before the outside. You have to give chashivas to the mitzvah. You're supposed to do a more important mitzvah before the less important mitzvah. So therefore, what's the alternative? Pei beis amid aleph at the top. V'neisev lifnim v'hader neisev v'chutz. So why don't we first put the blood inside and then outside? No, that's not going to work. Why? Given the ika chatas v'asham. Since there's a chatas and an asham, that if you bring their blood into the sanctuary, it's disqualified, because it says kol chatas asher yuvah midam el omoed chaper b'kodesh lotecha ba'ishti saref. That any chatas that's not supposed to be in the omoed, if you bring it in, it has to be burnt. And so therefore, so since the chatas and asham, if they go in, their blood is disqualified. He doesn't want to draw any distinctions and say which karbanos could actually be done in that manner, because the chatas and the asham, if they went in, they would be disqualified. So Rabbi Akiva says anything that goes in is disqualified, and not just the chatas, even though the pasuk specifically is only about the chatas. So Gemara explains, Rabbi Akiva's position that anything that goes in. So what does he do with the words that whole chatas asher yuvah? It says any chatas. No, it says the Gemara. It says Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda named Shmuel, a student is mixing for his teacher hot water with his wine. And then the teacher says, or the Rebbe says, mix it with me bechamin, with warm water. So it's counterintuitive. Amar lo b'chametz. He says, do with warm water. Amar lo b'chametz anu l'sutin. Are we dealing with warm water? So now, and I said, do it with water. It means with both. And so it means either warm or cold. And since the pasuk is referring to a chatas, and then because it's v'asi chatas, so milchti v'chatas askinan v'asi chatas the kasa rachman olamli. So why does the Torah repeat chatas? It's already talking about chatas. Elav chatas kamina la elakol kachim. It's to tell us that since it's not referring to the chatas but to all kachim. So Malas Kafar of Hunenberg Rav Yeshua, no. Milchti Yisravu kol kachim legavim mizbeach inyam marika v'shtifa. So since the pasuk, the Torah has already been discussing all the kachim on the altar have the din marika v'shtifa, that if there's expired meat in it, you have to break the utensils. So chatas the katzer rachman olamoi. Why does it say? It mean the previous pasuk was already referring to all the kachim. So why does it refer to the chatas here? Shema mina chatas im midi achrinu. So it's to tell us that the chatas, that it's to tell us that it's only the chatas and not anything else. It's only the chatas and not nothing else. Hold on. So hold on 1 second. 1 second. Okay, so then the Gemara says, and what is this mashal like? So mashal ma davar dama. What's it a mashal that it's like? It's like the following. It's more like a student who's mixing for his rabbi both in hot water and cold water. And then the rabbi says, only do it for me in warm water. And so then we see it's only referring to the warm water. And so it should only be referring to the chatas. So if that's the case, what's the logic for Rabbi Akiva? The explanation for Rabbi Akiva comes from michatas v'chol chatas. It comes from the fact that it could have just said v'chatas, but it says v'chol chatas. The Tanya, because we weren't in the Brayisa, chatas eli ela chatas. I might think this is only a reference to the chatas that it goes in kachi kachim minayin. How do I know all kachi kachim that are brought into the sanctuary? It's disqualified. Tamulim or kol chatas kachim cow minayin. I don't know all kachim cow. Tamulim or v'chol chatas. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. So that's the source of Rabbi Akiva's position. So Amar Rabbi Yossi Aguli, I feel like kol yom. You can make these drashas all day. Kol yom kula any shomelecha. I wouldn't accept it. El chatas. What does chatas teach us? Only el chatas yachid. I might think only the chatas yachid if it goes in is disqualified. Chatas sibur minayin. I don't know even the communal one. Tamomer kol chatas. Only el chatas zachar. I might think only el chatas zachar. Chatas nekeva minayin. Also a female animal. Tamomer v'chol. So the Gemara says, wait 1 second. The Kapei Light should be the opposite. The standard chatas is a female animal, not a male animal. How do we know even a chatas zachar? Says the Gemara, "Savar Rabbi Yossi Aglili, high crow." Does Rabbi Yossi Aglili really say that the pasuk is coming to teach us every chatas? The whole Indian here says Rabbi Yossi Aglili. The whole pasuk here is only speaking about the bull that is burnt and the goats that are burnt. That the place where they're supposed to be applied is inside, but it has a disqualification. And the Torah says, and that pasuk is teaching us that they are supposed to be burned outside the courtyard, and if you eat it, you get a violation. Amrulo. So they said, so that's what Rabbi Yossi Aglili said, and so the Chachamim said to him, Chatos and how do we know that the blood that went inside the sanctuary is also prohibited? No, that he learned out from the fact that it said Hein lo huva, that it says that Moshe Rabbeinu said to Aaron, why do you not eat from the Sa'ir Achatas of Rosh Chodesh, which is a Chatas Chitzona? Its blood wasn't brought in. And so from here we learn that if they had brought the blood in, they wouldn't be able to read it. So that's what Rabbi Yossi Aglili does with the pasuk. So the Gemara says, with Dvarav Rabbi Akiva Kamar, yeah. Rabbi Yossi Aglili doesn't accept it, but he was saying even according to Rabbi Akiva, his drasha should be for I don't accept his drasha, because if he was going to make a drasha, it would be for about every single chatos. Okay, so now welcome back, Jeff. Missed you. So now we're at the, even though we saw you on the Zoom. So now we have the Mishnah on the bottom of Pei Beis Amud Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Chatos shekibo dama b'shnei kosos. So let's say you received the blood of the chatos in two separate cups. One animal slaughtered, you had its blood in two separate cups. So one of the cups was brought outside the courtyard. It's not supposed to go outside the Azara, but it did. The blood in the cup that remained inside can still be sprinkled. It's kosher. But if one of their blood, one of the cups was brought into the sanctuary, then Rabbi Yossi Aglili says the cup that remained in the courtyard is still going to be kosher. The blood that went in obviously is disqualified, but Rabbi Yossi Aglili said the blood that remained in the courtyard is kosher. The Chachamim post on the Chachamim say no. They're both disqualified. So I'm Rabbi Yossi Aglili. What are you talking about? We have a kav chomer. If you have a machshava, you have a thought to bring the carbon outside of the place it's supposed to be, outside the courtyard. If a cup was brought out, we don't prohibit the cup that remained inside. A place where the machshava is not disqualified inside the sanctuary, i.e., if you have a thought to bring the carbon inside the sanctuary, then it's not disqualified. The blood that's outside, Eino din. If you have a thought to bring the blood inside the sanctuary, you have an improper thought about the inside, then it's not going to be disqualifying. That's for sure. The cup that remained in the courtyard should not be disqualified. That was what Rabbi Yossi Aglili said, and our Gemara is going to continue it. Let's say the blood was brought in to be applied to the altar. Even though it was not applied on the inner altar, also it's disqualified. Rabbi Shimon Omer, and it's only disqualified once it actually does an atonement. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, if it was brought in accidentally, then it's going to be kosher. All the disqualified blood that was applied to the altar, tzitz does not serve as an atonement. The forehead golden forehead plate of the Kohen Gadol does not make them kosher. But if the Rambam says the meat was tamei, or according to some, the blood was tamei, then that's tzitz miratz ala tamei. The tzitz says you could still use that; it's still kosher, and you fulfilled your obligation. But the tzitz does not atone for the what went outside of the courtyard of the temple. Tanya, I'm Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Kavachomer. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that if you bring one cup of blood inside, that the cup that's outside in the courtyard is still kosher. He says to learn it out from a Kavachomer. It's just like if you have an improper thought about the blood being about the carbon being brought outside, it doesn't disqualify the blood that remained inside. If you have an improper thought about bringing the carbon in the base of Mikdash itself, and that's not disqualifying. It's for sure it should be the case that the blood that was brought inside should not disqualify the blood that's in the courtyard. Amrulo, the Chachamim responded, it says about the blood that's brought into the sanctuary, if anything is brought, even if a portion of the blood is brought in, all the blood of that animal is disqualified. So Amar Lahem, he responds to them, Kal v'chomer l'yotzei. No, I'll bring you a kal v'chomer from the blood that went outside of the courtyard. And just like a case where the the blood does not disqualify if it goes in. The thought process about machshava does not disqualify inside, but posel dam shebifnim, but it does disqualify the blood inside. As shebechutz, according to you, it disqualifies the blood that's in the courtyard. A place where the thought does disqualify outside. For sure, it should disqualify the blood that remains inside, according to you. So the Chachamim responded, no, it says in the pasuk that which is brought in. Only the blood that's brought in disqualifies the remaining blood, but the blood that goes out does not disqualify the remaining blood. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Yosef continues, well, if that's the case, we should say machshava. If you have an improper thought about something brought into this, about bringing the carbon into the sanctuary, it should be disqualified from the following kal v'chomer. Just like outside, where the blood that's outside, it does not disqualify the blood that remain inside. But machshava poselos. But if you have an improper thought about the outside, it's disqualifying. Machshava poselos b'chutz. Makom sheposel dam shebifnim es dam shebechutz. A place where the blood that's inside would disqualify the blood that's outside. Eno din shetei machshava poselos b'fnim. For sure, the blood. For sure, it should be the case that if you have improper thought about the inside, it should be disqualified. So the Gemara says, well, the reason why it's not, Harei Omer, it says about disqualifying thought by Yom HaShlishi, if it's on the third day, which means on top of Pei Beis Amar Beis, Makom Shem Meshulash, Makom Shem Meshulash Bedam Bebasar Beimurim, a place that's kosher for the blood, the meat, and the parts. And the outside, during the time of the Bamos, was kosher for all that, and the inside sanctuary was never kosher for all that. So then the Gemara says another one, you should not allow machshava, the thought process should not be disqualified if it's outside. If you have a thought about the outside, from a kavachomer, ma makom shepasal dam shebifnim. Just like where the blood that's inside disqualifies the blood that's outside. Ein machsheva poselas bifnim, but the improper thought does not disqualify inside. Makom shlo posel dam shebechutz eshebifnim. If it's outside, where the blood that's outside does not disqualify the blood that remains inside. Eino din shlo posel machsheva bechutz. For sure, it should be the case that the blood that's outside should not disqualify the blood that the improper thought about outside should not be disqualifying. So Tam Omer Shlishi. So the Gemara explains, no, the pasuk says Shlishi Chutz L'zmano. That teaches us that if it's beyond the proper time, it's disqualified. And Pigol is Chutz L'mkomo. So that's from the word Pigol, we learned out even beyond the proper place. So now the Gemara continues. Basar. The Gemara brings a brisa. Basar Hayotze L'chutz. So let's say meat goes outside of where it's allowed to be, it's disqualified. But the meat is brought into the sanctuary. Unlike the blood, the meat will remain kosher. You might have thought it's disqualified. Just like a place where the blood that's outside does not disqualify the blood that's inside. But if the meat goes outside, it's disqualified. The place where the blood that's inside does disqualify the blood that's outside, i.e. the sanctuary. So for sure, if the blood goes into the sanctuary, it should be disqualified. So says the pasuk, only the blood that goes in is prohibited, but not the meat. Kal v'chomer. Well, now if that's the case, we should make another kal v'chomer me'ato. Ma b'makom shepasal dam shebefnim eshebechutz basar nichnas lefnim kosher. Just like a place where if the blood is inside the sanctuary, it disqualifies even the blood that's outside, but the meat that goes in is kosher. Makom shelo pasal dam shebechutz eshebefnim. A place where the blood does not disqualify the inner blood. If the blood is brought outside, basar yotze l'chutz. And then if the meat is brought outside, Eino din shekosher, for sure it should be kosher. Harei Omer, basar basadeh treifa, lo to ubasar basadeh treifa, lo tochelu. That the meat that's in the field you cannot eat. Kivin sheyasa basar chutz l'machitzasa neser. Once the meat was brought outside, where you're not allowed to bring it, place where you can't bring it, it becomes prohibited. Tana Rabbanon. So now we go back to the pasuk. The Brisa cites the pasuk. It says that if you bring the blood inside, hin lo vas tamal kodesh panima. You had a question, Jeff? So it means prohibited to eat. Treifa means different things in the Torah.
I know. Well, here it's translated into corn.
That's the literal translation, but the treifa refers to different things. The Torah means something you can't eat. Treifa is used different ways.
But if you had that concept without words, right? With the start to step then it would mean exactly the same thing that they were hoping.
So okay. I don't know. We can't get into the exegesis. Okay, Tana Rabbanan Panima. It says if the blood is brought into the sanctuary, it becomes prohibited. Eliela Panima. So the pasuk really says here, Kodesh Panima. You're not allowed to bring it Kodesh Panima. That you're not allowed to bring it. So why does it also have to say Ela Kodesh? It should just say Panima, that's into the sanctuary. Why does it repeat Ela Kodesh? So Eliel Panima, and how do I know that if you also bring it into the sanctuary, not just the Holy of Holies, that it's prohibited? Tamomer Ela Kodesh Panima. So into the sanctuary, and Panima is the Holy of Holies. Gemara says V'yomar Kodesh. It should just say it's prohibited to go into the Kodesh, the sanctuary, the outer sanctuary. The Ayomar Panima, and it doesn't need to say that if it goes into the Holy of Holies. For sure, you have to get to the Holy of Holies by walking through the sanctuary. So Amarabba, no, if we wouldn't know what Kodesh means, we would think Panima only refers to the sanctuary. And so therefore you need one to tell you what the other one means. Just like we know that when the Torah tells us that an Eved Ivri, whether he's a Toshav, whether he's a Eved Ivri for life, a Hebrew slave for life, because he had his ear pierced, or Sachar for 6 years, either way he can't eat the Truma. But if we know that one who can't eat the Truma of the Kohen, if he's a slave for life, for sure he can't do it if he's only for 6 years. So why does it need to say both? So it's the same concept. Toshav is Sachar. The Tanya Toshav is that Kanoa Kinyan Olam. Toshav is a slave. The Hebrew slave is acquired forever. Sachar is that Kanoa Kinyan Shanim. That's the one who's acquired for 6 years. Yomar Toshav. It should just say the Toshav can't eat the Truma. Yomar Sachar. It doesn't have to say the Sachar. Vani Omer, and I would say Kanoa Kinyan Olam Ein Ochel. Somebody who's acquired forever cannot eat the Truma. Kanoa Kinyan Shanim. With somebody just for a period of years, will call okay. Mara says no. If that was the case, yeah, we need both to tell us. If we just had one word, I would say, yeah, only the one who's acquired for years can eat, but the one who's kinyan olam will be able to eat. So we need both the term to tell us that neither one can eat. Abaye says, no, it's not a good comparison. Bishlam also, in the case of the Toshav and the Sachir, it's two separate people. And even though the Torah could have written that the nirtza can eat, and the other one that the other one can't eat the truma, we could have actually derived from the logical argument. Nevertheless, sometimes the Torah will write something even though it could have been learned out from a Kal V'chomer. But in our case over here, Kivan the Ifsal Behechal, since it's already disqualified once you get to the sanctuary, Lifnai Lifnim my boy. Why do we need to be told that it can't go to that you can't bring it to the Holy of Holies? Once it's already you can't bring it to the sanctuary, for sure you can't get it to the Holy of Holies. Oh, no, you need it because let's say you would have brought it through the Meshupash, meaning to say, Rashi says, through the roofs or the upper chambers of the Mesa Mikdash. And then you might have thought if you brought it in like Mission Impossible, you went through the gutters, you went through different ways, you might have thought, oh, that's okay. So we say, no, that's what the pasuk is telling us. That's also not okay. So I'm like, Rava, what are you talking about? It says you cannot bring it in. And if you bring it in that manner, that's not called Havah. To teach us the opposite, that if when you thought you're bringing it in, you had in mind to bring it into the Holy of Holies, and then you get into the sanctuary and say, you know what, I'm not going to do it, well, then it's not disqualified. That's what the Chiddush is here. So, by Rava, so now Rava asks a series of questions. I think it might be 10 questions. So Paro Dever Shal Tzipor V'Saya Avodas Kochavim Sheechnas Tamel Lefnei Lefnim Mao. So those are examples of karbonos, Paro Dever Shal Tzipor, and the goat of idolatry, where their blood was supposed to go into the sanctuary. You were supposed to bring their blood to be applied in the sanctuary. So if you what's the halacha there? If you bring it into the Holy of Holies, Mao mi amrinan el kodesh pnima. Do we say the pasuk says kohecha the karinan el kodesh karina le pnima? Wherever there's a prohibition bringing it to the Kodesh, there's a prohibition to bring it inside. But if there's no prohibition to bring it to the sanctuary, there's no prohibition to bring it to the Holy of Holies. Or maybe no, it's not the right place. So therefore you're in violation. It's disqualified. And if you really want to say that it's not the right place, the bull and the goat of Yom Kippur, let's say you sprinkled their blood on the between the poles of the ark, and then you brought it out to the sanctuary, and then you brought it in. Do we say, well, it was originally its place, and so therefore you're allowed to bring it back? No, you went out, so you're no longer allowed to bring it in, and so therefore it's disqualified. If you want to say since you brought it out, it's disqualified. If you went back in. Let's say you sprinkled the blood of the bull or the goat on the curtain that stands between the altar, inner altar, and the parocha, the Holy of Holies and the sanctuary. And then you brought him outside. Now you brought him in after you already fulfilled your obligation on top of Beit Gimel Amud Aleph. Mao, do we say well, for sure we would say, and do we say in this case that since there's no separation between there's no separation between it's certainly one place. Shehin Havsak Bain Tayim. There was no separation. It was not considered achnasa shalobim komo. Odoma yitzia karina bay, or maybe do we say? Or do we say we call this a yitzia? So the Gemara says, take it. We leave this question unresolved. Basically, hold on. Meaning to say here, you didn't bring it outside the sanctuary, you just brought it beyond the golden altar. And then he brought it back between the parochas and the mizbeach. So the Gemara says, we'll leave this question unresolved. Take you. All right, this is today's daf, but we can go on a little bit now. Hold on.